All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Every single year, Well and Good puts out wellness trends. They're separated into the categories of food, health, beauty, fitness, home, and self-care. And today I'm bringing Katie Spies on the show to talk about the wellness trends they've identified for 2022. Katie Spies is the SVP and General Manager at Well and Good. She's a media executive with a track record for significantly growing revenue and audiences for brands through the development and implementation of data-led strategies. And this is the 11th year that Well and Good has put out wellness trends. So let's bring her on the show and see what they predict for 2022. Kate Spies, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. I'm sad that you weren't able to fly back to your homeland, but I'm happy that you were able to jump on the podcast. It seems like everyone's testing positive, but it sounds like you and your fiance are on the mend and feeling good.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for having me post-COVID. I've done it again. And yes, no Australia right now, but hopefully soon.
Definitely. One of, I think, my happy places, I was so surprised with the beautiful produce and like homemade bowls and homemade nut milk lattes you could get. Like, I was in hog heaven when Chris and I went there for vacation before kids. So I can only imagine how far it's come since then, which was a good 4.5, almost 5 years ago. So always exciting to celebrate fresh produce and just, I don't know, little cafes that care. So
yes, little cafes that care. I love that. It's very true. And often people say to me, what got you into wellness and well-being? And I'm like, honestly, being Australian, it's really some of the main tenets of well-being is just so integral in our culture. And to your point, fresh produce and supporting farmers and being outside and, getting sunshine and being in nature and all of that good stuff. So it is a great place, and, hopefully we can all travel there again soon.
Definitely. Well, let's get into the 2022 wellness trends. Every single year, Well and Good puts out a report, and I always find it interesting because there are things that I just think you nail on the head. But I'd love to go through some of the food and self-care wellness trends, and then some of the things that you see happening outside of those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for reading them. So much work goes into them. So we are so thrilled when people read them and take value from them. This is our 11th year of trends, and we love doing it. And we think there's some really exciting things on the horizon in all of the different wellness verticals.
Awesome. Well, let's start with food because that's my happy place.
What are you seeing happening in the food space for 2022?
So we're seeing some really interesting trends here. One that I personally love and had kind of peripherally noticed, but really couldn't verbalize until one of our food reporters brought this up as a trend, is that juice and juicing really is back, but leaving the detox behind. So I think we can all agree that juice cleansers were not necessarily a great moment in the world and not a great moment for kind of nutrition, body acceptance, or mental health, really. But what we're seeing now is this real support of local juice shops. And so we're seeing in many different kind of cities and states all around the US that local juice shops are opening. People are supporting them. And speaking to many different RDs in our network, juice is a great thing when we're not kind of relying on it as a meal. And so it's interesting to see this resurgence. And, I would love your thoughts as to why you think that juice is back. It's lots of the people that we spoke to for this trend said, juice has long time been a big part of Caribbean and Latinx cultures and nutrition. And we're really seeing this trend coming from Central and South America, spreading up through Florida and taking hold of the rest of the country. So I think this is an interesting one and kind of an example, a trend that I didn't expect to see.
Yeah, it surprised me when I saw this on your list, but when I think about the last 2 years of the pandemic and people, not really knowing where to grasp when it comes to nutrition, and then knowing that green things are good for them and seeing like, okay, well, if I plug my nose and take down this green juice, or if it's more, which I do really love an ad. Someone's adding to their plate, adding to their meal, adding nourishing things. I mean, being completely honest, I still prefer smoothies and veg loaded with fiber over juice. But I think as long as it's low glycemic, there's a place for it in regards to getting some vitamin K, getting some nutrients, getting some hydration. Yeah, let's definitely leave the detox behind.
Definitely. We can all agree on that.
Because that is a blood sugar roller coaster. And I think really confusing for people. Like, the hard part is, when we look at the last 2 years, we were given the opportunity to work from home, live from home, more access to our pantry, more access to our kitchen. You think that would create healthier eating, but the amount of stress that we all were burdened with over the last 2 years, there was a lot of stress eating and actually a lot of weight gain nationwide. So I do hope that as people lean on juice, that it really is for the nutrition, and in addition to a balanced meal and balanced eating, versus relying on it as a low caloric option to restrict or lose weight.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely co-sign that.
Okay, thanks. So let's talk about some other liquids that are popular coming off of the pandemic.
Yeah, so I don't think this one will surprise you because it's been ebbing along for a little while now, but non-alcoholic spirits and actually non-alcoholic wine taking hold in a huge way. People have been sober curious really forever, but I think that there has been a trend towards sober curiosity over the last 3 to 5 years. And we're just seeing that this is exploding. So Kin Euphorics has released a new adaptogenic canned drink. Clean & Co. is a new low and non-alcoholic spirits brand that launched in fall of last year and is coming out with new products in 2022. And Boisson is one of my favorite places. So it's a retailer. It's like a traditional wine and bottle shop that sells only alcohol-free beverages. So there's one in Williamsburg where I live. The layout is beautiful. The products are beautiful. It's like a dream store. And then you can find literally every single thing that you can imagine, but alcohol free. And so there's spirits, there's wines, there's beers, there's obviously different spirit mixes, and they have seen really big growth. They've gone from 0 to 3 locations and just have huge plans for country-wide expansion. So this is a trend I can really get behind. I love a glass of wine, but I also know how much impact alcohol has on my sleep and, my exhaustion levels. And so to be able to mix it up, particularly during the week, and enjoy an alcohol-free beverage has been great for me. And I think that's why so many people are taking to this trend.
No, I love this trend, especially, going through three pregnancies, two deliveries, two postpartums. I'm over a year breastfeeding with Tashin. And when you think about like that period of someone's life, like we want to imbibe in a way that isn't going to mess with our breast milk, that isn't going to mess with our sleep. We've already had babies doing that.
Yeah.
And you want that moment. And I think that is what a lot of people crave, is that socialization of, hey, let's grab a drink after work, or it's a ritual in which when people finish their day, they say, oh, I'm having my glass of wine. And to have that moment, I've been using non-alcoholic wine and spritzers. I've been using sound tea with clients. They have a bubbly rose tea for a couple of years now. And it's just putting those pink bubbles into a wine glass and having them have that moment without the impact metabolically on their sleep, like you said, and liver health. I think it's huge because it doesn't have to be sugar loaded either. I think when people used to think a non-alcoholic drink, they thought a lava flow without the rum, right? And you're like, that's not great for you. But what we're seeing are adaptogenic non-alcoholic spritzers, tea infused for all those polyphenols. Like they're coming with bitters, like a bit of something that may help you digest your food, calm your body, and have that moment without the impact, which I think is huge. I'm super excited about this trend, especially because it's normalizing it. There's some funny reels and memes on the internet right now where people are like, why is it such a big deal that I don't drink? And I think we need to like blur that line. It needs to be okay for someone to not have a drink sometimes, and for someone to decide to have a drink sometimes, without it being, I'm on the wagon, I'm off the wagon, I'm sober, I'm not sober. Like we're claiming it. And I think the sober curious people from years ago felt really comfortable claiming it. Like I'm going to be sober. I'm not going to drink. This has been 3 years of me not drinking. Welcome to 2022. But there are a lot of people that aren't ready to commit to never having a drink again, but really need the flexibility and the support to take some time off. And when you fill the gap, when you replace instead of remove, replacing with all of these awesome non-alcoholic spirits, you're giving people the flexibility and almost the language to say, hey, I'm going to have this sound tea instead. Or would you like, you can offer something without feeling like you're stepping on one side of the line or the other.
Totally. And to your point, just the social pressure around drinking, for all of the ways that Australia is amazing, we definitely have a big drinking culture. And so I can, speak to this with a lot of experience. And I don't necessarily, again, to your point, feel like, I don't want to say I'll never have a glass of wine again. I love having a glass of wine, but really what I love most is that moment and being able to treat yourself, lean in, and it not always is great. And I think during the pandemic, so many people were drinking more because it felt like for a period of time, that's all we had because we were at home and wanted that kind of moment of unwind. So to be able to do that without stressing your liver and being able to have some nights off, I think I agree. Such a strong trend. And, Seedlip has been around for a while now, but it's got some really cool, interesting competitors.
I do see, probably in the same way that alcohol, we're seeing, non-alcoholic spirits become really popular. On the heels of that, I think you're also seeing CBD continue to stay popular and stay relevant.
Very much. And adaptogens, those, what we kind of call functional drinks. There's a lot of that happening.
Yeah. Just, we want our cake and we want to eat it too. You want that moment of like, oh, the anxiety is kind of, you're brushing your shoulders off, you're relaxing a little bit, you're cozying down into your chair, but you don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. searching for a glass of water with a headache.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I think the next trend I'm really excited about, only because we really need to start taking control of our own health in our own home. So what is food trend number 3?
Yes. So food trend number 3, I'm really excited about as well, because I was not very aware of vertical farming until the last year, and like so many things, once you have been made aware of something, you then see it everywhere. And it's been like that for vertical farming for me. So vertical farms are exactly as they sound. They stand upwards. They require 99% less space and 95% less water than traditional farming. And so it really helps in areas there isn't a ton of space and where you need to plant a large density of plants like lettuce, microgreens, strawberries, mushroom, the produce that you need in big quantities. And so the importance of vertical farming incredibly clear through the climate crisis, and the pandemic's brought it into sharper focus because so many people were suddenly buying their own produce. They were kind of understanding more about our food systems and some of the ways that food systems are lacking. And so there are several farming companies that we spoke to that are planning expansion across the country and also planning expansion into hundreds of stores. So an example is Aero Farms, which actually has been around since 2004, are now seeing much more interest in their produce and have huge in-store expansion plans for 2022. And Bowery Farming is the biggest vertical farming company in the US. They grow different types of greens. They're also planning new locations for this year. So I think that this is so interesting because it is really helping the planet. It is great. Anything that helps us create more good, nutritious, fresh food, I think is an incredibly positive thing for all populations and communities. So love to see this trend. It's only one of the kind of environmentally friendly trends that are happening in the food space, but it's a really important and transformative one.
Yeah, you're seeing it at a corporate level all the way down to a home level. I mean, the access to vertical farms for an apartment and for a home. And I think they're less intimidating. When you think about buying a grow bed, you need the space for that. I spent almost a decade in an apartment in Brentwood, California, and didn't have the space for anything outside of an herb garden, but it is amazing to see what vertical farming can fit into an apartment living and all the way to what you're talking about on the corporate level where vertical farming is happening. I did see vertical farming even a few farms here in Southern California. We do have a lot of space, but you mentioned greens and strawberries, and one of our favorite farms, Tanaka Farms here in SoCal, they actually vertically farm their strawberries for space purposes and to be able to produce more. So it's exactly what you're saying. Getting produce, fiber, greens, colorful, phytochemical rich produce into the hands of as many consumers as possible is going to really help our health. So is there a vertical farm that you recommend for someone who is or considering one for their home?
There are a couple of different brands that I think are really interesting. The name's escaping me now, but we can put it in the show notes. But there is a kit that allows you to grow mushrooms in your home. And I think mushrooms are such an interesting one because they're finicky. They can go off really quickly. And so to be able to kind of have mushrooms right at your fingertip is so cool. And then another interesting thing that we're seeing in the kitchen around fresh produce is refrigerators. There's one from Bosch that essentially helps you manage fresh produce so that when you put it in the refrigerator, there's special technology that means that it will stay fresh for longer. And so it's really reducing food waste. And so to your point, the amount of stuff that people can do in their apartment now to not only produce fresh produce, but also keep it fresher for longer is really cool as well. And a trend that we called last year for coming into 2021 that we think really has held true and will continue to grow is this idea of really using all waste products, what would traditionally be waste products, to recreate new meals or new ingredients and using the whole vegetable. And so we're seeing that when people are finding their produce come to the end of the life cycle, that they will, create stocks, or they will use celery heads as herbs and all of that good stuff. So it's great to see this full 360 life kind of life cycle of getting better fresh ingredients, then being able to keep them longer and then use them in their entirety.
Oh, I definitely have started using way more food waste since becoming a mom, whether it's carrot tops and throwing those inside of a smoothie, like you said, celery leaves into a salad or into a smoothie, saving the stalks of our broccoli and cauliflower and putting that through my food processor to rice it up. You know, so often looking back just in my 20s that I would make broccoli, use almost the whole head, but throw the stalk away. So it's all of those little tips and tricks, especially when you have a toddler that takes 2 bites out of something and then is done. Finding a way to freeze it, reuse it, cut it, slice it, put it into a kitchen dump type of a soup, whatever it takes. We're keeping stuff around here. And it's just a practice. I think once you do it once or twice, you're like, oh, I can always do that. And you just think differently, which is awesome. All right. Well, what outside of produce have you been seeing some traction?
So something, again, in this sustainability realm that we think is really interesting is the rise in popularity and use of sea greens in the US. So we try every year to call like the ingredient. You know, in previous years, it's been easy. It was kale, and then it was cauliflower, and then it was chickpeas. So there's often, you know, one vegetable that is really taking hold and people are using more than they've used previously. This year, it was hard to find just one because I think there's been this really positive push towards diversifying what you're putting on your plate and trying to eat as many, you know, the colors of the rainbows, the kind of thing that you talk about a lot. And so it's great, but it made it harder for us to choose just one thing. And so our food reporters did a bunch of digging. And really what we kept coming back to was algae, wakame, kombu, nori, Irish moss, all of these different sea greens that are being used in snacks. They're used to feed cows and animals that later will be eaten to kind of help the carbon footprint of those animals. They're being used in things like vegan shrimp. Obviously, sea greens are not a new idea, and lots of cultures globally have been using sea greens for a really long time. And they, of course, have been used here as well, but we're just seeing them used in so many different new and interesting ways in, again, every part of the food cycle. And the thing that is so great about them is they require no irrigation, no fertilization, no herbicides, no feed, and they really, you know, they obviously grow in the sea. And so they're really supportive of the environment. They absorb more carbon than other forms of kind of greens. And yeah, it's just they're nutrient dense, which, you know, obviously we'll be able to speak to with a lot more credibility than me. And so I think that this is a really interesting move in the food space. And really, you know, it's like lots of different people in the US are consuming these in a way that they haven't before.
Definitely. I mean, I look back and I think about clients who were taking kelp pills or more in supplement form. And again, I mean, I'm telling you, becoming a mom, it just levels up everything because you start to look at nutrient density and you really start to look at like what is in things and how do you elevate your kids' nutrition. And for me, you know, those seaweed packs that I used to think like, this is air, you know, it's like crunchy, salty air.
Yeah.
And occasionally if I had a client who really loved chips, we might move that direction. But with kids, like I have those around because I know if Bash is eating that or Tashin is eating that once a week, that they're getting the iodine that their body needs for thyroid health. And so that is just, it's almost like how people used to say, have a Brazil nut a week for selenium, you know, or a day. And it's almost like a little multivitamin worth of that mineral for body health, thyroid health. So that's kind of how I think about the seaweed snacks as a way to just check that box as a multivitamin in its own. So I love that these are becoming popular. You know, using them in my house kind of depends on if people are willing to eat them. So starting with the seaweed snacks is kind of where we're at in the Levesque house. when these boys all come around and when Chris comes around to being willing to eat a little bit more sea greens, we'll incorporate them a little bit more. But I'm really happy to see this on the trends list, just based on the nutrient density for people's, the amount of minerals they have in their body. And that's great.
Yeah. And the way to my hot tip is putting them in smoothies so they can kind of replace, the kale or the spinach that people begrudgingly throw into their smoothie. You can just do a little cube of sea greens as a smoothie base, and it works in the same way that any other green would work.
Absolutely. So what are your favorite companies incorporating sea greens, and how are we using them?
So I really like Gimme Snacks. I'm sure that you're familiar with them. So GIM, capital ME. They are the top selling organic seaweed brand in the US. And this, their sales just keep on doubling because I really do like what they create. I think they're delicious. They're probably, to your point, not for everyone, or maybe people need to try them and have their mind open because they don't necessarily sound the most palatable. And then I also really like Nudi's Irresistible Ramen Packs. So they're made from spirulina jade noodles. And I think that for people so many people associate kind of, ramen packs with being in college and having no money and eating them for 3 meals a day. And it's not the kind of thing you probably want to eat for 3 meals a day or even 3 meals a week. But I think for a quick turnaround situation, they're an interesting brand as well. And then Nestle, I'm keeping my eyes on Nestle because they're launching a line of, a vegan shrimp using sea greens, a blend of nori and cognac root, I believe. And so it'll be interesting to see the new developments in this space as well, because it's a little bit nascent, but a lot of big brands are interested.
Yeah, I think with I always pump the brakes on, I want to call them Franken foods.
Yes.
Where you're like, what are you creating out of what? Because I just get a little concerned about maybe not the base ingredients, but emulsifiers, fillers, oils that are being chosen where we're not really looking at like the research in regards to inflammation, C-reactive protein, interleukin-6. So I always pump the brakes. I'm super into the sea greens.
Yeah.
Ramen even sounds good, but I'm gonna have to hold the phone and wait until I see what the ingredient list looks like for what's coming out in the creation of shrimp.
I feel like that's a good call. I do try and follow the rule of only eating ingredients that I can pronounce.
Yeah, pronounce. And that you're like, how many ingredients are we talking about here? Let's keep it to a minimum. Well, moving on from food, you guys attack different areas in wellness in a holistic way. So let's jump into self-care. What are you guys seeing in regards to the trends for 2022 and self-care?
Yeah, I love our self-care trends because I think that they're very diverse this year. They come from all different verticals and all different aspects of one's well-being. And so the first one that may not be as intuitive, but actually is so important is financial wellness. So obviously, financial stress is huge. It is a problem that nearly everyone faces at some point in their life, and particularly given what we've all been through over the past 2 years with people being furloughed and losing their jobs. There's a slate of new and really improved financial wellness apps. And so their mission is to empower people and to reduce the stress around managing your finances, which I think is, a great purpose to have. And many of these apps are catering to people that have currently been underserved by traditional banks. And so many of the apps are catering specifically to women of color. And I think that what's so interesting is they really are not being created just to purely manage your finances in a way that a banking app might. They're using elements of psychology and personalization and accountability alongside tech to really help users become better money managers. And there are kind of user-friendly interfaces, and it's just feeling a lot more approachable and inclusive. So I think this is such a positive step in this direction because really so much of your well-being depends on how you manage your finances and your resources.
Definitely. I can say firsthand that financial stress is probably the most impactful in my life of the stress. You know, I feel like I can handle dinner time. I can handle whining kids. I can handle an emotional roller coaster. You know, if my spouse is on one or if I'm on one, like I feel like I can handle all that. It's definitely when the finances get tough and tight. And as a female entrepreneur, you know, bootstrapping my business completely and being the only breadwinner and the only income, it's definitely the thing that causes me the most sleepless nights, you know, especially coming off of COVID. Like, I think that was the scariest part, not really even the, you know, the sore throat or the cough or whatever. It was really that moment of, oh, wow, what happens if I'm put in the hospital for this and I am so integral in their livelihood, their ability to financially survive here. A lot of pressure for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think back to when I was first getting out of college and the app Minted was really popular. And it was great. I mean, it consolidated instead of having to go open your bank and your credit card and your, you know, student loans or whatever it is, it consolidated everything in there and kind of kept track. You could budget, say, I want to only spend this much on groceries, or I only want to spend this much on shopping, or whatever the case may be. I'm sure it's come a lot further than that since the Minted days of the early 2000s with me. What apps are you recommending and what are they able to do for us?
Yeah. So the best thing about this trend is you really can get really specific about what your need is and probably find an app to suit it. So there's everything from an app that gamifies financial education. That's called Finansana, and it really helps people just learn, and, you know, knowledge is power in this space. There's also an app called Landis that coaches users through every step of getting a mortgage, which is, you know, a really complicated and confusing space. I consider myself to be an intelligent enough person, and it breaks my brain, you know, and so having an app like this, I think, is so important. Then there's apps like Perch Credit, which really aims to boost inclusivity by helping build credit in non-traditional ways. So important considering the US is really run on credit scores in many ways. Tend is an online banking app which is designed to uplift the underbanked Latinx communities by removing a lot of red tape. And so again, huge. And then one of my favorites is a debt management company called Happy Money. So they worked with a bunch of psychologists and they developed a 6-week online course which is really aimed at reducing financial stress. And the course is called Peace. And I think that it's a good example of where we have these apps that are really functional and education based, as well as apps really designed to tackle the wellness and well-being piece of it and the stress like you were talking about. So that's only some of the various different apps that are available on the market. So it really does feel like no matter what your financial stress is, because it looks so different for all of us, you'll be able to find something to help you and support you.
No, it's great. It's great. I think avoidance is, you know, whenever there's financial stress, or especially financial stress, you're like, I don't even want to open that bank account right now.
Totally.
Especially if I'm purchasing protein powder and paying for production, or, you know, you're like, hey, babe, no more coffee shops. Hey, thanks. Like you just like that's going to make a major impact. But just knowing, you know, being able to change the mindset and go head first into it, I think actually makes you feel like you're in more control. Exactly. And having more information, the more power you have. And that's, I mean, I don't have an app for that. I have a sister for that. She runs finance and ops for Be Well by Kelly. And just having her on the team and being able to forecast and model numbers for me in a way that I've never had before in the last decade it is more information, more power, and you feel more in control. So definitely these apps sound like a way to educate, make you feel more empowered, and get a little control over your finances, which is great.
Yeah. And it's so interesting you bring up the work example, because obviously you and I are in different positions in that you are an entrepreneur and you're bootstrapping, and I work as part of a bigger company, but I feel very similarly about our accounting and business operations team, moving from a really content focused role to a general manager role where I'm responsible for our finances. It's overwhelming at first. And then you realize that, like all things, the more you know, and it is empowering. And I think that these apps really help people do that in their personal lives because, it is easier to kind of stick your head under the rug and just think, I'm just not going to look for a month. But the situation piles up and piles up. And I think the example of work is such a good one because you wouldn't necessarily do that at work. You wouldn't turn the other cheek. You'd dive in and try and figure it out. And it's like, we all need to do that in our personal finances as well.
Absolutely. Well, these apps sound like they can definitely help.
They can.
So outside of finances, what else are we looking at for self-care? What does it look like for 2022?
One that I am super pumped about because anything that feels like it is pro women, I am very pro. And so the trend that we think has been taking hold in 2021 is just going to explode in 2022 is the world finally really waking up to menopausal women. Over 1 billion people will soon experience menopause, both peri and menopause. Yet it's one of those things like periods were a couple of decades ago, or like infertility was a couple of decades ago, that we just don't talk about, that women are kind of expected to suffer in silence because, as with everything to do with female reproductive systems, it's very individual. And for some people, menopause is a breeze. And for some people, perimenopause starts really early. And, people are experiencing menopausal symptoms for decades. And there is no, OBGYNs, many of them are not specifically trained to treat, in commas, menopause. The symptoms are very varied. You often have to go to many different doctors to really treat the symptoms. And there's no one that's been really dedicated to working with menopausal women. And so, as has happened with a lot of these societal shifts around the female experience, Gen X women in particular, and also millennials who are now, getting to the peri and menopausal stage are like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to suffer in silence. And so we're seeing product launches, healthcare resources, getting financial backing, and also just a ton of focus on medical education access to both medical professionals and also consumers to really destigmatize menopause and make it part of a more mainstream conversation. I think it's so positive. I'm very grateful to all the Gen Xers that have kind of paved the way for us elder and also younger millennials and then the Gen Zs to come to be able to move through these life stages with more comfort.
Definitely. I think there are a number of clients that I've worked with that didn't know they were even experiencing perimenopause symptoms because there was zero education around it.
Yeah.
I mean, how long ago did we learn about even menstruating? You learn in 5th grade for 1 week. Sometimes people are experiencing it and sometimes it's totally irrelevant because it's going to be another 4 years before you even have a period. So I think what I've learned is that when it's not relevant and you're not living it, it almost goes in one ear and out the other. And so I am right there with you, super thankful for those that have come before me to pave the way and hopefully get some resources, because all that we've had in the past is, should you use, hormones or hormone replacement therapy, or should you not?
Yep.
And then below that is like, do phytoestrogens help or hurt? And so there are so many, it's a mixed bag of information and a lot of opinions. So what are some resources and companies that you're looking forward to, like, coming into the space?
Yeah, a really interesting development is that a lot of big names are coming into this space and garnering big investment dollars. So Kindra is a menopause-focused supplement brand that's being backed by Katie Couric Media, which I think is great. Electra Health, which provides education, is being backed by Alexis Ohanian's company. And Stacey London is now the CEO of a menopause-focused company called State of. And so really where the big well-named names go, the rest of the population will follow. It's always good to have big names involved in a space because they obviously garner attention. Womanness is a menopause lifestyle brand with skincare, sexual health and supplements, and they also provide education. I think that they're doing an excellent job, and they're going to be available in Target, which I think is great because it's very accessible and, you know, all around the country. Then also Alloy is a menopause focused telehealth brand. They've received multi-million dollars in funding. Telehealth has just changed the game in every single segment, and so it's great to see telehealth becoming available for women kind of working through menopause as well. And then Peanut Menopause is a support group app that is recently launched, and it's really aims to end the isolation around that people can feel in menopause, to your point, when they don't even know they're experiencing it, or they are the first of their friendship group or community to go through it. And so I think that what we're seeing in this space is there's so many different areas. There's the product side of it, there's the education side, and really, most importantly, there are developments in the healthcare and telehealth front. So it's being tackled from a really 360 manner, which I think is necessary and great.
I remember my mom telling me if she didn't get her menopause symptoms under control, she would have divorced my dad. And it was like kind of an inside joke that she was, you know, she just felt like she was going crazy and no one was there to listen. And luckily she had a doctor that could care for her. But to go through something like that alone, or to feel like you're not yourself, or emotionally on some type of maybe like a feeling like depressed or anxious or irritability and inability to sleep, night sweats, vaginal dryness, like all of these things really impact someone's daily life. And so getting it under control or getting a support group or some education around it is critical.
Totally. And I think anything that we can do to normalize and destigmatize and educate women, and also just really everyone, about the wild impact that hormones can have on us at any point in our life is just so important. Because, you know, even thinking about the way that I feel at different points in my cycle, or obviously, you know, seeing many friends go through pregnancy and then postpartum, and the way that hormones just can do amazing things, but also wreak havoc there. And then it just continues for us through every decade, because then you get to peri and beyond. And I have friends in their late 40s, early 50s who are experiencing perimenopause, and they're like, am I actually angry or is it just peri? You know, it's like, it can have real emotional impact. And so I think the more that we talk about the full life cycle of women plus and their hormones and how that impacts us, our emotional and mental health, is so important.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I have this conversation way too often, but it's just, why were we learning calculus when we could be learning about our hormones and our bodies and how we're going to change? And I mean, if I could just go uproot the whole education system and say, like, what do we really need to understand? What do we need to explore? There'd be so much more self-discovery and self-understanding and relationship building tools and communication tools. Like, what people really need when they graduate college is to be able to feel confident and empowered that they can take on the real world, you know, that they can manage their career and or become an entrepreneur, that they can communicate with their significant other, that they can competently raise children without emotional impact.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we can all really focus on taking care of one another. And I mean, we're missing the mark when we have the internet that can do algebra for us. In my opinion.
Yes. I agree. And add financial education in there. Why are these apps now having to do the job, you know?
Right. Nutrition, communication, finances, like the real world stuff. We need it. We need it really bad. I'm happy to see that there's just so much funding going into building platforms that are education based for all of these things, whether it's a therapist that put together a course on communication or feeding kids or whatever it may be. I really do dig education because it's empowering and it really changes our experience. Okay. Let's do a couple more self-care before time's up, and we'll see what this audience has to say about all of your wellness trends.
Yes. So another one that probably needed to have more attention paid from, the moment we started getting educated is mental health. So employers are finally realizing that mental health has serious impacts on their business, and people will quit their jobs if they don't feel like their stress and their burnout is being acknowledged by their company, and if they're not getting the support they need. So again, another really positive development born of the terrible times that the pandemic brought. Many employees are just saying enough. You can't demand everything from me and then not give me anything in return. So companies like BetterUp have seen their customer base grow by 80%. They've raised 300 million in funding. And so they work with organizations to provide mental health support, whether it's access to therapy, whether it's education, whether it is support to find community services, things like that. And, employers are really looking at what they offer as their benefits package, and they're expanding them. So many employers are trying to include subsidized services, mental health training at work, self-guided tools. And I think that it's going to become table stakes for employees as they're considering where they want to work and what their next role might be. People are going to want to understand, okay, what mental health support do you provide? Just in the same way as we ask what physical health support and benefits do you provide? So a great shift.
Oh, absolutely. I have a very small company. It includes family. So I'm sure they would tell me if they needed some support here, but it is so true. Coming off of the pandemic and everyone maybe not having that work-life balance, definitely not having work-life balance, myself included. It's hard to work from home and especially if you have family, or to feel like, even if you don't, to feel like your computer's screaming at you to work when it's a non-work hour, because there are no boundaries around when emails are shot off and requests are made. And you know what? Cal Newport's work, Deep Work, is definitely something I suggest to this audience, because what he shows is that most of us are just responding to an onslaught of DMs, Slacks, texts, emails, and simplifying your life and deciding, like, does Slack make sense for your company? Or is it just another place where people can fire off at you, distract you from what your deep work is, and pull you away from prioritizing your own mental health, whether that be working out, meditation, seeing a therapist, having a coffee with a friend. We have so many communication tools that are screaming at us to work that, I've used Slack at my company for a while, but after diving into Deep Work, I'm actually considering taking it off the table and restricting work communications simply to email.
So interesting. I'm writing Deep Work down because I also have been thinking about, we use Slack and we're so dependent on it, but to your exact point, it's just another thing constantly going.
Yeah. And I will say, as an influencer with a social media following, you have your top requests, your primary requests, and then I have this ether full of DMs that it's like, am I supposed to be DMing everyone back? Is that protocol, with the amount of contacts that I'm getting? Or is that you want to be supportive, but I also have clients who are emailing and texting and calling. And then I have a third book that I'm writing, and I have children, and I have, my own mental health, and it takes a lot of effort to put some boundaries in place and put some walls up and decide, is this actually productive, or is it just messing with our mental health? And I really do think that the mental health piece, especially in the last couple of years and working from home, has a lot to do with people not having boundaries.
Totally. I agree.
It's just, we need those boundaries big time. So cool. I love seeing that on your list. I obviously think that working out is a piece of mental health, and moving your body, whether that's getting outside for a walk or sweating pretty hard, has just a killer effect on your ability to feel like you have your world under control. So
I agree.
That's a huge piece for me too.
Me also. And I mean, in another part of part of our trends prediction, the third wave of digital fitness and the personalization of digital fitness that's coming is so incredible. And I think is just going to empower people to, work out at home or even in their local gym space, even more in a way that suits them and is really accessible, because we're seeing the digitization of personal training making this space more affordable. And it's so cool using AI technology and things that hurt my brain, but I'm very down for. So yes, agreed that movement, it's a core piece of managing, any anxiety that I feel.
Definitely. And you touched on it, so we'll go there. I have a tonal,
yes,
and the tonal is a really amazing piece of equipment that takes up very little space, but can put resistance up to, I think it's like crazy, like 500 pounds. And the AI technology, I can say firsthand, is really, really impressive. So whether you're doing deadlifts or squats or, curls or whatever the case may be, it feels when you're starting to peter out and lowers the weight so you can complete your set, and then learns how hard you worked and continues to make it stronger for you. So not even a trainer in real life can really understand where your strength is, like AI and a piece of technology like that, which is super cool.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. And that technology is also coming. It won't be right away as sophisticated as like a tonal or a tempo, but it's coming to people's phones as well, using movement tracking so that, technology or humans on the other end can say, well, can form correct in real time, which I think is important as well at home.
So awesome. Well, Kate, this was great. I'm really excited about 2022. I'm hopeful. I know we talked earlier, so many people have had COVID. Omicron is a super contagious one. A lot of funny videos on the internet about it, but I am really hopeful for the number of people who are able to easily recover from this and have a massive dose of natural immunity on top of whatever decision they've made for themselves and their family personally, just to hope, in the hopes that we all can get back to a normal social life and be together, build our relationships in real life, get that hit of dopamine from a real human hug. Like, that's the good stuff. So I feel like last year we were all really hopeful that 2021 was the year, but I can confidently say that I'm really excited about 2022 and, the return to normal, hopefully, for a lot of people. So thank you for being here. Let's do a fire round where you shoot off, 3 or 4 more of your trends that we should be keeping an eye out for, and where people can find the article.
Yes. So people can find the whole trends report at wellandgood.com/fitness wellness trends. It's a weird URL. We've had it for 11 years. So it's got the fitness in there. So people, and also on our Instagram and all of those good places. So some of the trends that I really love in the beauty sphere, that we're moving away from anti-aging and more towards thinking about skin longevity and actually thinking about our skin as an organ and what it needs for health. And so we're seeing great developments in the beauty space to support healthy skin kind of top to toe. I also am a really big fan of the fact that so many fitness brands are becoming one-stop shops, and they're thinking about how they, weave nutrition or mental health or other forms of care into what they offer from a fitness perspective. So, Equinox, CrossFit, a lot of these big brands are thinking about that. And then the other trend that I think is super cool that we touched on a little bit is just how much our kitchen is getting a refresh to really sustain plant-based eating habits. I'm mostly plant-based, and I do really, as someone who's busy and, sometimes gets to cooking, sometimes doesn't. As we discussed, I'm really mindful of food waste, and all of the developments of being able to grow things in your own kitchen, to being able to preserve them for longer, I think are personally very beneficial to me.
Definitely. I think it's beneficial to anyone as long as they're not on a carnivore diet. Yes. They're including some type of produce and vegetables and into their diet, and food waste and expiration dates and not getting around to cooking that broccoli that you purchased at the farmer's market is really frustrating. So how can we make it last longer and for multiple meals and get our family all of that fiber-rich goodness that's going to proliferate their gut microbiome? I'm all for it. Cool. One trend that you didn't mention that I love that you called out is male fertility.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of prenatal companies now produce prenatals for men, including a company called WeNatal that'll come out. I'm really excited about this company. They've done some clinical trials to be able to show an improvement in motility and quality of male sperm, and being that sperm and egg come together to make an embryo and that genetic issues are not all on the women. I am super excited to see this, whether it's, a nutrient dense prenatal for men that includes antioxidants to prevent genetic issues. I'm all for it. So way to call that one too.
Yes, agreed. I am so with you. It takes two people usually to make a baby. And the fact that it's been all on us, if there are any issues, couldn't agree more. And I think bringing men into the combo further helps destigmatize infertility and also hopefully gives people some great tools to manage any issues that may come up.
You said it earlier, the more we know. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here, Kate. I had a really good time talking with you through all the trends, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm always excited for when trends are put out by a wellness brand like yours. So thanks for looking at all the research and pulling this together.
Thank you so much for having me. Loved our chat.
All right, guys, we'll throw the wellness trend links in the show notes, and Kate is over at Well and Good. So we'll tag Well and Good in the show notes as well. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.